Let's get to it then, and let's get to the Mail on Sunday and that extraordinary game at the Stadium of Light between Sunderland and Arsenal. Their headline is Brobby Dazzler. Jonathan, Arsenal finally slip up. A 10-game winning streak is over. Did Sunderland show the rest of the league this is how you can get at them?
Well, we're at the stage with Arsenal where any little chink in the armour now is being looked at, and that's a comment on how far they've come, I think, under Arteta this season. Even the fact they're being scored against is news now after 8 games without conceding. I mean, yes and no. I think it depends whether you look at the specifics of the game or the bigger picture. For me, the bigger picture is that's the kind of game Arsenal we've seen in not just under Arteta, but in previous seasons. They've lost those games, you know, going away, evening kick-off, hostile away ground, a physical team playing against them. You know, Wenger's Arsenal used to struggle in those conditions. The fact they had the resilience to come back to lead 2-1. Yes, they let in an equaliser at the end, but I felt the turnaround showed a lot about their character and how Arteta's got them wired. But in the specifics, the way the goals were scored against them were quite similar. Arteta spoke about this. They were both quite direct. Bits of play, a knockdown, a bit of sort of a second ball, smashing it in. Haaland scored against them for Man City with, again, ball down the middle of the pitch, won a joust in the middle, went through and scored. So, I don't know, in this age of analysis, we'll have lots of foot clubs looking at this and trying to hit Arsenal with this. But it's relative. They came away, I felt, with a point that other rivals may not get when they go to the Stadium of Light.
Just picking up on that, Craig, came away with a point. I think once the dust settles, when Mikel Arteta look at it like that, even though after the game he said when that goal went in, because it's so unlike Arsenal to concede at the moment, he felt a funny feeling in his tummy. But a 0.1 maybe in the grand scheme of things.
It is a 0.1. I looked at this 2-2 draw last night in the evening kick-off, and it almost felt like a 2-2 draw in which both teams won. There was a 2-2 draw at lunchtime that Jonathan was at. Yeah. It felt like a 2-2 draw where both teams lost. And you look at the coverage, you know, when newspapers are working to deadline with it being an evening kick-off, and I know it's on the back of one page, you know, Arsenal blow the chance to go 9 points clear, question marks being asked. I don't think it was. I think Arsenal answered questions last night because at 1-0 down at half-time, we were looking at their response in the second half. Now, there's been previous iterations and seasons and versions of Arsenal where they would have lost that match, but they came out and they looked like champions. I watched that second half, and to see them have the mental and the technical capacity to come back and put themselves in a winning position against a good team, in a febrile stadium. You know, you won't go to many places like the Stadium of Light this year. And they were 90 seconds away from every newspaper declaring them champions. Don't forget this. The Premier League is tough. Any team can concede a 94th minute equaliser. And yes, others will, as Jonathan said, others will look, you know, for a chink in the armour. I don't think there really is one, you know, for us to be talking about the end of a 10-match winning run. Come on. This year is different. We've spoken at this juncture of the season about Arsenal being potential champions before, but I don't think we've ever really quite believed it. I don't think they've ever really quite believed it themselves. This time we do. They smell like champions. They sound like champions. They look like champions. And certainly I wouldn't look at last night and deviate from that opinion.
Jonathan, Rory Smith of The Observer was at the game. He said the path seems set. Arsenal will go into the international break with a lead of up to 8 points. It could have been 9 points, of course. Their challengers starting to recede in the distance. They would leave the rest of the league to punch each other out. For the rest of the league, it is just a glimmer, but that will do for now. However, it could be 4 points going into the international break, depending on what happens at the Etihad later on today. But if you'd offered Mikel Arteta this position after 11 games, he'd have snapped your hands off, wouldn't he?
Well, absolutely. I think we're slightly conditioned in a way by what's happened over the last 5-10 years with champions getting 95, 98, 100 points. And I think we're slightly conditioned to believe that even at this stage in a title challenge, dropping 2 points away from home is kind of a disaster. And I think that era has kind of gone a little bit. I think 90 points will win the title this season. I think Arsenal is still head and shoulders above the rest. And if you look at how Sunderland have started the season, a draw at the Stadium of Light, I think is at the end of the season is going to be seen as a really good result. And I think, like, inherent in a lot of this stuff about, you know, have they offered a template? I think what Sunderland have shown this season, it's not easy just to do what Sunderland do. The way that they've made it difficult for teams, the way they've managed to rotate the side, to rotate players, and still, keep that ethos, keep that game plan, and not have that drop off in level. I think that shows that what Sunderland are doing is not necessarily replicable by other teams.
Craig, you said that this feels different this time with regard to Arsenal. I cover Mikel Arteta and Arsenal a lot. In his news conference, looking ahead to this game, he was asked the question, the only team potentially that could stop Arsenal is Arsenal.
Yeah.
He said he doesn't agree with that because of the quality in the league. But is there maybe some substance to that argument that it's only Arsenal who may be going to stop them?
I don't think maybe. I think absolutely. Previously when Arsenal have set the pace, September, October time, they've always had a really viable, strong challenger breathing down the neck. I don't think they have this time. Manchester City are, we'll get to Manchester City in just a bit, but has a team ever been so reliant on one player? They look vulnerable in that regard. For Liverpool, this could potentially be a transition season. Arsenal, we shouldn't really be saying that about champions, but it might be. Arsenal just seem to have everything set. And you look through that spine. Is there a better spine in the Premier League? Is there a better spine in world football of David Raya, Gabriel, Declan Rice? That is so strong. You look there, they've got authority, they've got experience, they've got athleticism, they've got technical superiority. Everything about Arsenal now is set there to go and win the title. And I agree with the sentiment you said there, but also Arteta in himself seems to have changed. We've seen games between Arsenal and Newcastle in recent years, Darmish, where they've both been at, and Arteta himself has been too emotional, blaming everything from the weather to the ball to the dark arts. He isn't like that now. He came out last night. He was very measured. No, OK, we've drawn it Sunderland, we move on. It's OK. And within that composure that Arteta has got about himself, I think we're seeing that also play out on the pitch.
Jonathan, easy to forget as well, they have got a huge number of injuries at that club as well at the minute. You're looking at Gyökeres and Martinelli, the most recent ones, and the four longer-term ones in Madueke, the captain, Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz. They all look like they're going to be coming back, well, the majority of them, after the international break. Has that break come at the right time for them as well?
Yeah, it has. I mean, exactly. They've got these injuries. They're all in the same area of the pitch as well. And going into the season, if there was a big question mark, Arsenal might have been around creativity. Will they score? Will they do this? And they've got these injuries at the top of the pitch. The goals are still coming. I think 5 of those players are likely to come back after the break, where they play Spurs. I mean, it's a big week for Arsenal. They go Spurs, Bayern Munich, Chelsea away. One of those weeks where you'll find out who they are, blah, blah, blah. But it's true. To have even 2 or 3 of those players back, to a Gyökeres, an Odegaard, Madueke would be big. But they are showing, I mean, I agree with what Craig says about the spine and also the squad. He went for depth in the summer. We're seeing depth in action. And at the moment, as we've sort of said, the chinks in the armour aren't big ones.
Craig, it's easy to talk just about Arsenal here, but we should focus on Sunderland as well. Luke Edwards was at the Stadium of Light from the Sunday Telegraph. Sunderland, and this is meant as the biggest of compliments, are a horrible side to play in the best traditions of English football. They were the sort of team, and Jonathan alluded to this before, that have haunted Arsenal for years, and for 45 minutes they were almost perfect in what they did. How are they doing this? They came up via the playoffs. Notoriously, it's the most difficult way to go up because of the time you have to try and reinvigorate your squad. They did, and then some. 13, I think, new signings, if I've counted correctly. How have they managed to do what they're doing?
In a record spend as well for a promoted team. Now, I looked at that Championship playoff final against Sheffield United in May, and you looked at the team and you thought, they're going to go down next year. But thankfully, so did the hierarchy. They took the same view, and rather than going up, and we've seen the model in recent years was almost to be promoted and accept relegation with the view of coming back stronger 12, 18 months down the line. Sunderland thought, no, we've got this opportunity. They took out a loan to bring forward the spending, so they got all their ducks in the row off the pitch, and the recruitment has been fantastic. Now, you might have ordinarily looked at that, and I'll be honest, a lot of the names who come in I had no prior knowledge of, but that is a real feather in the cap of those guys behind the scenes there. They've identified those players, they've identified them at value, and they haven't been scared to rip up a team which came up with momentum and feel good on the basis of quality-wise that perhaps weren't good enough. You know, good players as well. Chris Rigg, one of the most talked about young players in the country, finds himself on the bench now. Dan Neil, a brilliant servant, is out of the picture. There's only 2 or 3 who are actually now starting week on week. But what they've built is, and this lends itself to the stadium as well, and what Mikel Arteta spoke about last night, that atmosphere, it's one of the noisiest, most intense, most encouraging for a home team in the country. And they've just got this momentum team that almost feels like the team up the road during the early days of the takeover, when you've all of a sudden got a club reunited. And that's really hard to stop. And I've mentioned Newcastle there. You know, I've got a connection in that region. There's a lot of Newcastle fans who are very nervous about the derby in just over a month's time. And games like last night, and you watch it live on the telly, add to that anxiety. I thought they were brilliant. I really did. And Dan Bollard, the centre half, you know, someone said it's a shame he declared for Northern Ireland 6 years ago, because he would be in the reckoning with England now. They've got we talked about spine there. They've got that spine. Ballard and Granit Xhaka as well. Wow, when we come to the conversation about players of the season, signings of the summer, Granit Xhaka, my new neighbour, funny enough, would be right up there. Yeah, if you are watching Granit, me and my boys play football on a little patch of grass not far from you, and we do need, my 3 boys do like to bomb on. We need someone to sit in. So if you want to come out and play Granit, by all means, yeah.
Jonathan, Craig touched on it there about the reinvigoration at Sunderland. The Observer has gone a bit of a deep dive, like they always do with particular clubs, in what's called the audit. Paul Hayward's focused on Sunderland. Craig mentioned some of the players that Sunderland signed, some might not have heard of. There's a focus here on the manager as well, because you could say the same about him. The Black Cats finished 16th in the 2023-24 Championship when Lebris was hired. His impressive start at Lorient had faded. They were relegated from Ligue 1 in 2024. If you didn't know about his work before, people are fast catching on about his work now, aren't they?
No, exactly. And the fact that, I mean, we talked about the rotation, the players that have come in, the injuries that they've had. The fact that new players can come in, you know, so you know, he can bring in a Dinger and Robbie off the bench. You know, Alderete's had an injury, and new players come in, and that I think it shows how strongly his ideas have taken hold. That it's not just a first 11. You know, it's not just gifted individuals. That everyone is buying into that same idea. I mean, he strikes me as a really impressive guy, like a really personal skills, his man management. And yeah, I think Sunderland and Lebris actually have surprised a huge amount of people this season. It's the togetherness that Craig was talking about.